Welcome. So this is the second in a 3-video series where I'm just going to go over, I made 30 different polls over the past month, just asking you guys what your thoughts are about a variety of hobby-related topics. And in this video, we're going to look at the second third of your responses, and I'll share some of my thoughts about them, about the questions as well. Let's get into this. It should be fun. Would you ever start collecting new kinds of cards, i.e. Marvel, hockey, etc., something that you've never been interested in before, or do you feel pretty much settled into your zone currently? This one had 20% said, I've already found my card realm, thank you very much. 30% said, I'm always looking for cool new stuff to collect. And 50% said, I'm not closed to the idea, but it's unlikely. I think I would put myself in the third category. You know, I like exploring and looking at different types of cards. You know, even if it's just to just look at it for a little while, even if, and then maybe I don't like it and I just try to flip it or resell it, but to just get to know it, get to know the knowledge. You know, I had a little spurt of time where I was learning more about Marvel cards just because they look cool and they got a history and they're kind of interesting to look into. Recently, I've been looking into some of the like super low end 19th century cigarette cards because they're just so old. I love the idea of learning about those. Or, you know, as I bought a port, I don't know if you saw my ComC port video, but there was a bunch of bird cards, and I think I'm going to make a video at some point about the history of bird cards because it's as old as the history of baseball cards. I was so surprised to find. So I just find it fascinating to learn about the different trading card spaces. Doesn't mean I necessarily am going to collect in all of those spaces. There might be somewhere I end up choosing like a single card, like to represent like the learning I'm going through, and be like, okay, maybe I will get one card to my PC to represent, you know, this research I've been doing about a topic. But other than that, I don't think I'm ever gonna go too deeply beyond, you know, for my PC really it's basketball. If I could get myself an Upper Deck Ken Griffey Jr. rookie for my PC, I'm sure I'd keep that because that was a card that I remember my neighbor having, and he had it in a cool little like display on his wall, and I just loved it. I would just stare at it sometimes like, nah, I want that card. And so, you know, maybe at some point, but generally basketball is going to be my PC. All right, next question. What do you think is more important in influencing the market value of a specific card? 30% player performance, 34% player hype, 36% media and narrative. That's really interesting. And there was some comments of people adding things, but I actually put these three there specifically because I know there's other things beyond these things. It's, you know, the macroeconomics affect it more than any of these three things. But I was curious in relation to each other what people thought, you know, between player performance, player hype, and narrative and media. And it's really interesting that it's really like a third almost. You know, it's a little bit more with some and a little bit less, but pretty much a third. So that's really interesting. For me, I feel like a lot of it, if I was to have to choose one of these, I would say player hype. The last one I would say is player performance, you know, because oftentimes player performance, it can feed the hype. It can cause more media and narrative, but oftentimes it's what gets picked up by the hype, because you can have certain players that play amazing, and if it doesn't get picked up by the hype train, it's not going to do anything to their card value. It's just, you know, overlooked completely by their card value. But if it feeds the hype machine somehow and it causes the hype machine to spark, then I feel like that's what oftentimes causes those sudden spikes at times. How many cards have you sent off for grading in your time? 108 people voted on this one, so quite a few. 12% said so many that it's hard to count, like more than 500. 6% said really a lot, like in the 100 to 500 range. 25% said some, like 11 to 100. 15% said just a few, 1 to 10. And 43% said zero, zilch, and nada. And I am in the zero, zilch, and nada. I have not yet sent any cards for grading. I have a little stack of them that I'm planning to, but I haven't yet. I haven't felt a need. You know, I think my context makes it a little bit different. You know, living abroad is just not worth all that extra hassle and headache and the time of it. You know, I'm kind of on a specific kind of timeline since I'm moving back to the States soon. My approach currently is based on my context that has a limited time frame. Once I'm back in the US and it's a different kind of time frame, and I'm settling in and rooting myself into a specific location a little bit longer, I think a lot of things will change with my approach, including grading. I'll probably start sending things off to grading a bit more. And some other things will change too. The nature of my PC is also going to change. I've been offloading a lot of stuff that I kind of thought was going to be PC just because I'm moving. We have to move everything. So I'm like, anything that I don't that I don't think I can get again or something, I might be keeping. But if it's something I think I can get again, I'm just okay, right now let's offload as much as I can, and then narrow down. Once I get back to the States, I'll have all the cards I had from when I was a kid. I'll narrow that down, figure out like what is my PC really going to look like. That wasn't related to this question, but that got me thinking, just in general, I think my approach is going to be changing once I've moved to the States in certain things. Even the nature of the content will probably start to shift a bit once I move there in a few months. What is your favorite grading company? So 41% said PSA, 11% BGS, 29% SGC, 9% CSG, 11% other. My personal favorite, I don't have a personal favorite. I wouldn't even know how to answer this question, to be honest. For resale value, I understand why people are doing PSA currently. There's a certain illogicalness to it, but at the same time, it is what it is, and it's the reality right now. And I don't necessarily, from a business side, I don't feel more connected to one company over the other. Like I like the underdogs oftentimes, and I find CSG to be the underdog in this space that has a lot of potential and is doing something really good. But it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to be sending off my cards to them that much either. So when it comes to my cards, I think it's going to be card by card reflection, and a lot of it, I probably will do PSA, as much as I kind of get annoyed by some of the approaches they have. For cards that I'm going to be selling and I'm going to be looking to sell, a PSA is probably where I'm going to go. I am interested in what this tag grading company is all about now. If you've been following them at all, in the way that they're using technology, I am curious about their future. So they're another one that could be on this list for me over time. If your full-time job could be connected into sports cards, would you prefer it that way, or would you prefer to keep it as a part-time hobby? So this was interesting. 54% said, I'd love to work with sports cards as my job, and 46% said, I'd much rather keep sports cards as a hobby. It makes sense to me. I feel like this is something that's going to be way different from person to person. There's some people who I think would absolutely hate to work in the realm of sports cards. It would probably kill their love for sports cards. And there's something to be said about that. For others, I think it's something that you can really, there's a lot of business elements that can be done in relation to sports cards. That's just a lot of fun. And then you get to be involved with cards too. For me, I would love to be involved with sports cards as my job, actually. Do you like rookie prospecting as part of your engagement with the hobby? 21% said, rookie prospecting is my jam. Love that ish. 28% said, I like rookie prospecting a decent amount. I do a bit of it. 24% said, I don't really like it, but there's a rare rookie here and there. And 28% said, I don't like rookie prospecting at all. That's not my thing. So this is an interesting one. Also, it's pretty evenly split across all four. So that's interesting. And it makes sense, I guess. Also, the 28% who said they don't do rookie prospecting, I bet they're more into collecting vintage and things like that, which is a really wonderful space. And I can completely 100% understand why somebody would put their hobby attention in that space specifically. At the same time, I could see why somebody likes it as a focus area. It's connected to what's going on in the sport. If you really love the sport in the league right now, it also makes sense to be involved in that kind of way, just as a way to connect in with what's going on. So I can understand why you would too. I'm sure everybody who is doing it has a different approach or a different reason. A lot of people, if they're doing rookie prospecting as kind of a financial approach, I'm kind of like, I don't know if that's really the wisest way to do it. But again, everybody has an engagement into the hobby and something that they find enjoyable with it. So the fact that this is kind of split evenly across all four, to me, I think is good. I think it's important that we have people approaching the hobby in a variety of different ways. It makes for a healthier ecosystem altogether. Do you have any paid subscription to any of the sports card data tracking tools? 9% said Market Movers, 13% said Card Ladder, 2% said Card Hedge, 1% said yes but a different one, and 76% said none. For me, I didn't click, but somebody else on there is Card Hedge. I wonder if that was you, JD. I have Card Hedge. I like Card Hedge. It's my preference. I think it's my preference for a couple of reasons. I think Card Ladder, the more I analyzed it, the number of cards they have is so much less than Market Movers or Card Hedge. And the way that they organize it, it seems more like a space to get a sense of general movements of things, not necessarily a space to look at specific cards too much, because they only have the more iconic, bigger cards. 90% of the cards that I end up getting, they don't have, I find. So that's one of the reasons I never was really interested in them. Market Movers is, I think they're fine. They're just it's their upper price tier that is the good one. and that's really expensive. And Card Hedge, I feel like for the price, it's more reasonable. It has a lot more cards in their database than Card Ladder, not as much as Market Movers, but they're increasing at a really fast rate. And it's easy for me to respect JD and River who work over there. And I like being able to support businesses in the hobby that I can respect. So Card Hedge is easy for me to respect. So that's why I've gone for them. But I also completely understand why 76% of people here say none, because I think in most contexts, it's not necessarily an important thing. If you're trying to go a little bit more towards semi-professional or like a larger scale side hustle or a full-time business in the hobby, then some of these data tools I think can streamline and ease a lot of the processes, for collecting your own portfolio, for being able to keep track of things with your own portfolio, for being able to see where possible cards are, to get a better sense of where things are with the market. But I don't think most people need to do that to participate in the hobby in an enjoyable way. If you're just collecting, your favorite players, your favorite teams, or something like that, there's no reason to have this. So I understand why a lot of people don't have it. But for me, yeah, I would have Card Hedge on that one. Next one: if you could only collect, buy, sell cards in one of the following categories, which would you choose? 35% said vintage, 30% said 90s and junk wax, 35% said modern and ultra modern. So pretty even split here. For myself, if I had to choose one to collect just to keep, I would do 90s and junk wax stuff. I love the mid 90s basketball inserts. I just love that stuff. Most of my PC, when I get back to the States and really go through my old cards, I'm probably going to try to figure out which sets I want to build and which cards are going to, from that era, are going to become part of my PC more deeply, because I haven't seen my collection back there in like 7 years or something, so I don't even really remember what's in it, but I know it's going to be a lot of 90s junk wax stuff, and I know I'm going to love it. So I think that's going to be a big part of the PC, not necessarily the stuff that I'm going to try to flip, but I'm okay with that, because I like the idea of, with modern and ultra modern, that's the space where it's a little bit more like I'm looking for opportunities for making money. With 90s and junk wax, I'm looking for more opportunities for PC, and for vintage, maybe a bit of a mix of the two. Next question: is pumping and dumping something that you worry about much in the hobby? 41% said it doesn't concern me in the slightest. There's bigger issues to worry about. 34% said it concerns me a little, but it's really pretty minor. 17% said it concerns me quite a lot, a top 5 kind of hobby concern. And 8% said it concerns me a lot. It's a scourge. It's out of control. I think I put myself in that second category. It concerns me a little, but it's really pretty minor. I do think that, there are major issues. There's scamming things going on in the hobby. There's tons of YouTube channels out there where you can learn about those kinds of things. And for the bigger ones, I do try to talk about them as well. With shill bidding is one that I find to be a massive issue. And there's other issues in the hobby of corruption and different issues that are really a problem. Pumping and dumping worries me quite a bit less than a number of those things. I have made a whole video about it. I don't know if I'll remember to link it up there, but I feel like there's not enough. First, you need an audience of people who aren't thinking, and I feel like hobby people, if they're still involved at this point, they're thinking about their choices, and they're not going to be able to be influenced so much by a strong pump. And if they do, then it's less about what that other person, the pumper, is doing, and more about what are you doing in your own mindset about how you're reflecting on your choices, because you shouldn't be influenced so easily like that. So it worries me a little bit less. I also don't think that there's enough influencers who have enough of an audience to really manipulate the market in any major ways. So maybe there's some minor shifts that can happen from this, but I think the other things that are involved with prices, including the macroeconomic factors, including the player hype, including player actual performance, and all these other kinds of things, I think those have a bigger influence on things than somebody trying to do a pump and dump scheme. So honestly, if somebody's really truly doing something nefarious with this, I'm going to want to know about it, and I'm going to want to avoid it, and I'm going to want to try to make sure it doesn't affect me or the people who are watching my channel. But I'm not going to seek it out everywhere and try to nitpick about it too much, because I think there's way bigger issues that are of genuine concern that require our attention way more than pumping and dumping does, to be honest. Next question. Vintage baseball cards have a longer history in the hobby than vintage cards in other sports. Do you think vintage basketball and football or any other sports will eventually also have the collector base that vintage baseball cards have? 60% said no, vintage baseball cards just have roots too deep. 38% said yes, I think vintage basketball and or football will catch up. And 2% said, what do you mean, dude? Those sports already are vintage equals. I think if I was to say this one, I would be in between the yes and the no. Like, I think if I had to choose one, I would put no. The baseball roots are so deep. But I do think that there is room at some point. I don't know when. I'm not recommending anything or anything like that. But I do feel like vintage basketball and vintage football should have a bit more of a collector base than they do. I'm surprised sometimes that they don't. I think personally, as somebody who loves basketball and loves the history of basketball, I don't have access to many vintage basketball cards currently where I'm living here in China. Just they're not around and doing eBay and stuff from here. So for now, I'm not involved in that space. But I love the idea. I mean, getting some of those 1960s, 1970s basketball cards, getting like the idea of having like a Dr. J rookie card, and it's amazing. And some of those early 70s cards look so cool. They just look so 70s. So I think I'd really love it, and I'd probably love it more than vintage baseball, even though I really love the history of baseball. And I do, I recognize the kind of the cultural impact of baseball in those times. But I feel like basketball's cultural impact is also massive, especially from like World War II, around that time on. The impact of basketball in the culture, I think, is a really big thing. And I love basketball. I play basketball. I collect basketball cards. Basketball's my jam. It's more fun to watch. It's so if I could myself collect vintage basketball, I could easily see myself going that direction once I move back to the States.